downloads. It's all downloads. I like to look at a painting and download the wisdom. I like to just be in the presence of masters. I like to just listen to them talk and download. I just like to be there with them fully. And like, it's just a place where we can all be together fully and download whatever wisdom that all of us have to teach each other, because we all have, it's a cultural thing. So what I would hope people get out of it isn't necessarily what the band is doing, it's what the essence of the environment is creating, what we all are the synergy that we're creating together. And I hope that can be a really positive, enlightening, freedom-filled experience.
It's important to stay stoked in whatever you're doing, you know? And when I see other people that are stoked, that makes me stoked, you know?
We got freak flags and they fly.
So here we are. We got musical shaman Austin Litz from Litz and Crypto Wave Radio. Also going to have Daly making an appearance on this.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Austin, to start this off, I'd love to hear about like common trends that you feel is really great in the music you love. And like more specifically, how do you, in your own way, define what is good music?
Oh man, I mean, that's such a loaded question. Good music is vibey. It's all vibe. And like, what is vibey? What $1 million question that is. But good music has good soul, I guess, good energy, a good vibe. Does it make your booty shake? Does it make your head think? It could be a number of those things. It doesn't have to necessarily be recorded super well. It doesn't necessarily need to be super professional. It needs to have vibe. And anything could mean good vibe. But that's what good music is to me. I've been listening to, I think it's called like Harold Budd and Brian Eno have this record called Pavilion of Dreams, which is like ambient music. I've been listening to tons of like ambient music and like Indian classical music, or I don't even know if it's Indian. It's more like new age, like Sadhguru's freaking music, like and that stuff's amazing to me. And if you like it, you like it, you know. I work in the studio constantly, and it's all about just like, did it sound good? It doesn't matter how you got there. If it sounds good, then just do it. But that's a loaded question. What is good? And you got to just use your intuition for that. It's an intuitive question, I guess, or intuitive answer to each individual.
Psychedelics. How has that shaped your approach to music?
Oh, wow. I mean, they really shaped my approach to life to a degree. I think they can really turn on parts of your brain to experience that intuitive vibe that we were just talking about. They open you up in these ways, and you can take those lessons and go back and learn from it. It's kind of like a trampoline, and there's like a wall maybe around you at all times, and you can like jump on this trampoline and like look over the wall. Drugs will allow you to like jump up and like peer over the wall for a little bit, but if you want to get over to the other side, like that might take something else, maybe. At least it did for me. Psychedelics can be a nice like trampoline to give you a peer into like the neighbor's garden. But if you want to make it if you're lost in the jungle and you want to make it, and then you're traveling in the forest, and then you realize that there's a garden, and you might make it to the garden, you might make it inside the home even. And psychedelics can just open your eyes to the path, maybe out of the jungle, into the forest, to the garden, maybe inside the home. You know, they might lead you there. And what they've done for music, that was kind of like a overarching thing, what it's done for my life, I guess, because music is a good metaphor for life. And in the same way, so it opens you up to colors and textures. It can allow you to appreciate simplicity. I really like electronic music. That's very simple. I really like house music. Or for instance, the background of behind you right now, it's just like some clouds with some sun rays. I really like it. You know, it's like, it's super simple, natural things. It can put you in tune musically with sort of getting out of your own way. You don't need to make things complicated, although maybe you do want to make things really complicated. It can make you appreciate like scatter randomness as well. And there's definitely, it can open you up to texture. Speaking specifically about music, there's certain textures that you can feel, vibrations, maybe those like lower vibrations that are hitting you in the roots. You can really feel those, or like squelchy high vibrations that are hitting you in the head. It just makes you more receptive and aware to feel those things.
About improvisation, like in the moment, do you think psychedelics have given an edge with that for you?
To a degree, yeah. I love improvising on psychedelics. I think not to throw myself under the bus, I think I was candy flipping while playing music for like a long stretch there. Yeah, it's a wild card. It can really just open you up to possibilities that you've never done. It can be just bananas. But with that wild card, you might do some dumb stuff. You might do some dumb stuff with your life. You might but it's beautiful. That chaos can be beautiful. Life and music, we don't necessarily know what beauty, what ultimate beauty is. Like how am I going to be the person to say that like this particular thing is the best particular thing? With chaos brings new feelings, new emotions, it brings newness, freshness. So there is maybe some beautiful thing lurking around the corner that you never knew to look for. And that can be really excellent. It just adds in this element of randomness that you weren't looking for. That might be the coolest thing you ever found.
Fuck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So going deeper down this psychedelics rabbit hole, talk to me about songwriting and how psychedelics has influenced that.
Oh man, so like in particular, this one time, so I was at this music festival and they had these like jars of mushroom tea. And I think it was like an eighth per mushroom tea, and it was flavored really nice. It was like legitimate. It was like lavender tea with like honey, and I couldn't help myself. I kept drinking the jars, and so I don't know how many jars I drank, but I then like started talking to the mushroom. He was in the sky, like talking to me, like the collective consciousness of the mushroom was like, it was like this like squid Cthulhu thing in the sky talking to me. And I woke up the next day and just like stream of consciousness wrote songs and wrote story songs. I think I wrote that song Steamboat Girls after that, which is a Litz song. Maybe not the most psychedelic of songs, but it tapped me into this like I wasn't even thinking. It was like this very stream of consciousness, like you don't even have to like lift the pen off the paper kind of thing. And I felt like I was channeling the mushroom maybe at that point. And counterintuitively, I think like through use of psychedelics, like it's opened me up to like kind of non-psychedelic-ish things. It opened my mind up in a more like robust way, so that when I wasn't on the drugs, things came out a little more like eloquent, I guess, compared to like what I was doing. It was like a little more put together. Somehow the experience the chaos of psychedelics, then when you come back out of it, it's like training weights for reality, and you're able to like handle situations in life. You can think about situations in life a little clearer because you were just in such like absolute chaos. And then so when that slows down, you're like, oh, I got this. Like that was so kooky. Like not like this, the world isn't spinning around. Like so it's actually like counterintuitively kind of like allowed me to write more like understandable and like metaphorical lyrics. And it's definitely tuned me into texture and like weird stuff like that, which I really enjoy.
So to put a bow on like this topic, what would you say are the greatest lessons you've learned from psychedelic experiences?
Like I said, it's a glimpse over the wall. It allowed me to realize, sometimes you can, if you form a distance from yourself, there's just like a little bit of space that you can give to allow something to fill in the gap. You're able to become aware of the fact that you might be in the jungle, trying to find a path to the forest, trying to peer over the wall into the garden, trying to make it into the home around a cozy fire. They can shed light on the path, on whatever path it is. And I think that's been the most influential things with psychedelics. And I mean that in like a musical sense as well as like a sense for life, or business or whatever it is. It can really illuminate anything. It can really illuminate any sort of aspect of your life. That's, a lot of people call like it light. LSD, they could call like light work or something. I don't know, whatever. But yeah, it sheds light. It shows you that there is maybe a different way to go about things.
Mm. Cheers to that.
Yeah. Cheers.
I started eating healthy when I first did psychedelic. Like the very next day, I was like, beforehand, I was a very picky eater. Like I love sweets and unhealthy food, and like I grew to appreciate natural foods. Basically immediately after. It came down to like me realizing that my preferences were kind of trapping me in like an unhealthy situation, and so just I wanted like kind of treat my future self right and give myself what would be good for me as opposed to like my short-term urge.
Right. You had a little bit of space. So there's like one self and here's the other self, and you were able to form the witness and make decisions separate from what some would call the ego. And so you were able to emancipate yourself from the pitfalls of the ego.
Super grateful for that.
Yeah.
So to jump to the side here a little bit. So you've got a side project, relatively new, Crypto Wave Radio.
Yes, sir.
So tell us about that. What's up?
It started as just like something I was doing when I was bored in quarantine. I got into minting NFTs on the crypto platform, on crypto platforms. So NFTs stands for non-fungible token, which essentially is a blockchain way of taking a digital file, and kind of a good way to think about it, or an easy way to think about it, is you can wrap your file in a blockchain coding, I guess, that says this is this specific file. And so it gives specificity to your file. You can clearly say that this is the file. Like me and you could share MP3 files all over the place, and we can share them with our friends, and we never know like what file was what. It turns into this like just copy after copy. So it's a digital way to say that this copy is this copy.
Like the original.
And we can, it's the original. Yeah, it gives OG-ness, it gives originalness, and you can prove it that like, and so because of that characteristic, technically it gives something more value. So people buy these non-fungible tokens, these NFTs. It's sort of like Jimi Hendrix's guitar that he played in Woodstock in 1969. That was his guitar. And there were a lot of Fender Stratocasters probably made in 1969, but the one that he touched on stage at Woodstock or whatever is probably worth a lot of money. And so this is like a digital way of being like, this was this file. And a lot of popular NFTs are kind of manufactured by crypto platforms that have that kind of like characteristics. Like I believe the crypto punks are like really popular ones, and I think it was Ethereum developers that made them, and then they gave them out as airdrops. So they like sent them to people, I believe, for free. But Ethereum is like a really big popular cryptocurrency that's really kind of changing things up in the world. So it has this like cool story and background to the file. And then the files are now worth money and people trade them around. So anyway, so I got into that world for fun, just like, you know, just hanging out in the crypto space and doing fun music. And then people were like, hey, I was streaming it. I was streaming in the studio, making these NFTs. I would like record a song a day. I kept it up for like 3 months, and I did like over 100 songs, like 120 something songs straight each day, and streamed it live. And then people started contacting me, and they were like, hey, is this your new band? Because they didn't really understand. The NFT thing's a little confusing. And I was like, yeah, sure, we can make it a band. You can book me. Sure, I'll figure out how to perform this live. And then when I got that in my head, like, okay, I'm going to perform it live, then I started making music that was like a little more geared towards like, okay, I'll perform this live. And then it kind of just like spilled. I really, really have fun doing it. I love electronic music. I love performing electronic music. I do it in a kind of unique way with instruments and triggering live loops. And it just spun into like a new band. It spun into a new project. And I slowed down on doing a song every day, and I started doing like maybe a song a week and like spending a lot of time on it. I have 21 tracks ready to release. I'm going to do 2 albums. So you guys are the first to hear it here on Weird Music, that I'm going to be dropping 2 full-length albums. The music's already done. I'm just I've been sitting on these tracks. I've compiled all of them, and people have been contacting me, and they're like, well, when are you going to release this music that you've been making? Because I've been playing it live, and people are like, I love this stuff. Like, when are you going to release it? And so I'm going to release 2 full-length albums, probably in the spring, and then in the summer, and maybe spring and fall. Yeah.
Hey. And are these going to be like generally available on like SoundCloud and Spotify, or
Spotify, SoundCloud, all that stuff? I've looked into pressing vinyl for them. I might do a vinyl just for fun. I might do a vinyl of them, and it's all original produced stuff here in my home studio. Crypto Wave Radio. Spring and fall 2022.
Yeah. Awesome. So I got a question here from Andrea Garcia.
Okay, yeah.
She'd love to know more about your artistic influences outside of music, like film, literature, cartoons, nature, like whatever else inspires your music and overall creativity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inspired by the sun every morning when I wake up, and I try to remind myself to respond. That life is a response, not a reaction, and just like really everything influences me. As we talked about, psychedelics definitely influenced me, and it just sent me on like a journey into a lot of different like ancient wisdoms and Eastern wisdoms and stuff like that. And then, like, as always in a rock and roll band, cultural standards and politics really come up. And I feel like it's almost our duty as musicians and artists to spread a message that we resonate with. That's like a huge part of why I resonated with like the jam band culture and the counterculture and the all this and that and the rebellion or whatever, because it was this message that I resonated with of freedom, of expressing yourself, of underlying tones of spirituality, all those fun things that are happening in kind of jammy culture, but just in general, rock and roll. It's a good vehicle to express like sociological, political ideas. Sometimes I can feel frustrated about the way things are going or something like that, and I like to express my opinions in via song. So a lot of influence comes from how I feel about current affairs, and then a lot of influence artistically comes from just like going back to the very first thing, just vibe. And what does that mean? It's like sometimes I look at a painting and I'm like, oh, that vibe, like this is like my friend's album of poetry, Jimbo A Rainbow, and this is Exiles from Eden. He wrote it over quarantine, and there was just like a lot of vibiness in this. And so I have, you know, I keep this around me in the studio because I really like the artwork, and I want to channel that. A lot of vibey artwork, and really listening to other people's music and being influenced by that stuff that has groove, simple, beautiful things. I'm really influenced by vibe. Yeah. But what does that mean? It's like a deep question.
You mentioned ancient philosophies. Like, how can you be more specific about how that Eastern philosophy and just like you mentioned, ancient wisdom influenced your creativity, your life?
Yeah, I love, I really love all sorts of like different wisdoms and philosophy, different types of practice. And it's very similar to music. Working on yourself, it can be very similar to music. Putting things into practice. So academically understanding philosophy is one side of the coin, but then actually like doing something daily, meditating daily, or whatever your practice is, waking up in the morning and looking at the sun and being grateful for it or whatever, you know, implementing things of action of into your daily life is very much like music. And I kind of give the example as learning philosophy without having a practice, or learning spiritualism without a practice, can kind of be like learning music theory, but not knowing how to play the guitar, never playing the guitar. So it's kind of like, I don't want to say pointless, because it's not pointless to learn the academic side of spirituality. In fact, it's very important. Learning music theory is very, very important. But to only know one side without having the other can be a little bit interesting. And so I've been really into recently practice, and I vibed with it so much because it is so much like music. It working on yourself, as I said, is so much like working on an instrument. And I really resonate with yogic culture, and there are kind of like rivers, or there's currents of energy that, you know, stem from, you know, ancient times through now. And then also I really like that stuff because I feel like in America we are toddlers culturally. We're the new kids on the block. We have like the food pyramid that we found out was wrong, and then they're like, okay, so we're going to try it this way. And then we have all these other things. I don't have ancestors here to teach me their wisdom. I'm suckling on the teat of Eastern philosophies and teachers, because they have 15,000 years of a proven track record of like, this works. Ayurveda and diet and yogic things, and or whatever your thing is. And of course, as an American in the melting pot, I also have a melting pot of ideology and philosophy and practice that I implement into my daily routine. But a lot of it is like this, America is this, like, we walk around like we know everything, and it is great here, and I'm very grateful to be here. But I did realize, at least, that like, hey, I don't have ancestors that really have this like current of energy that's been passed down from generation to generation of wisdom. These wisdom stories, the mythology and wisdom stories are so important, and we do have them here, like, you know, passed down from wherever. But America in general, I feel like it's missing a lot of that. So I've latched on to Eastern traditions, but I've also learned that Eastern traditions kind of morphed into like Western yoga, and like, and that's like a whole nother story as to what Western yoga is. And there's a lot of traditions out there that I would consider Western yoga, which is also really cool stuff. And so it's all just like currents of energy that are, I like to trace things back to the fountainhead, where there's generations of proven results.
I got a final question for you before the grand entrance of Ali Galley. How do you intend for your music to impact people? I'm curious what you hope your like band's takeaways are from a Litz show.
I hope that we were able to provide them a method of looking over that wall into the garden, as I spoke of earlier, or as like a protected bubble of a space where they can feel comfortable to be themselves. I've felt that at Grateful Dead concerts. My older friends that are like Deadheads, been touring with the Dead since Jerry or whatever, you know, in their 60s, and they're like, once we get into this crowd, once we get over the lip of the bowl, you know, we're at like Merriweather, and they're like, you know, once we get over the lip of the bowl, it's this like, you know, pavilion bowl thing. They're like, you're going to feel a conscious shift. And like, you can, I guess if you're, I mean, I might've been on drugs at the time, but like, I felt really safe in that space. And even if you weren't on drugs, you know, I really hope people can feel safe, like they can express themselves, like there is things to learn. Downloads, it's all downloads. I like to look at a painting and download the wisdom. I like to just be in the presence of masters. I like to just listen to them talk, and download. I just like to be there with them fully, and like, it's just a place where we can all be together fully, whatever that means, and download whatever wisdom that all of us have to teach each other, because we all have, it's a cultural thing. So what I would hope people get out of it isn't necessarily what the band is doing, it's what the essence of the environment is creating, what we all are the synergy that we're creating together. And I hope that can be a really positive, enlightening, freedom filled experience.
So you got a special guest joining us, Ali Galley. What is up? Ali Galley is I'll just leave it at, they're a legend. So Ali, the floor is yours.
Well, I did want to ask about your new rig. You got a lot of new toys on that, the new touring rig. I was curious how that expanded your arsenal of sounds and effects, and what some of your favorite sounds and effects that came out of that were to you.
Yeah, totally. So long story short, I went from outside the box to inside the box, from a production standpoint. So outside the box would be like using all analog gear, and I had like an external mixer, and I had all these external components. Like a guitar pedal board is outside the box. It's a bunch of little physical components that you can buy. So I went inside the box. I decided inside the box would be meaning I'm using a computer of like to be the brain of the operation. So I'm running all my keyboards now into a computer. I'm running all my microphones into a computer, and I'm running Ableton Live, and it has opened up a huge arsenal. I haven't done this in the past because I wanted to make sure that I had a strong enough and most reliable computer to do that. So in the past, I would run my microphone into like a vocal effects processor, and I would take a cable from the mic into the processor, from the processor out of the processor into like an actual mixer, and then like separate that signal and then send it to the sound guy. And that was like an individual unit that was like in front of me. And then I had same thing with the saxophone. I had like a pedal board just for my saxophone with like a bunch of units. So I had this like spaghetti mess of cables. So now all of my instruments, each individual instrument plugs into an interface, and then I control everything inside of Ableton. So if I want delay, I do it in Ableton. If I want to do stutter effects, I do it in Ableton. If I want to have filters, I do it in Ableton. If I want to have a looper, I do it in Ableton. So it really opened basically any effect that exists. I now have the ability to use that live on any one of my instruments. Furthermore, the band, we've been using a click track sent to the drummer at our disposal if we so choose. So if we're like jamming along, I can hit my looper and it'll loop, and then it'll start sending a click signal to the drummer, and then Nick on the drums will be able to play in time with my loop, and we can do really cool things. And then since the loop is inside of Ableton, it's just streamlined everything. I don't have to send that signal outside of Ableton into guitar pedal boards and do stuff. So I was doing that. I was like sending it. I was like capturing things like on a separate looper, and then out of the looper into my mixer, and then on the mixer I had some filters and stuff, and I could do stuff. But now I just capture it in Ableton, and then I have a MIDI controller. I can grab a loop, and then if I want delay on the loop, I turn a knob. If I want filter on the loop, I turn a knob. So it streamlined everything so that I have a bunch of programmable knobs and buttons that are going into my computer and telling the computer what to do. I'll show you the box. It's right here. It's a little messy right now because I've been working on it.
Yeah, that's the same box that you started the Crypto Wave thing with, right?
I built it kind of for Crypto Wave, but I also I built it for both projects. So I have some gear in these drawers. So I am using outboard gear as well. I lied. I'm not all the way inside the box, but I built it physically inside of a box. Saying inside the box is like metaphor in production talk for like using things inside a computer. It's essentially a recording studio in a box. You could think of it as all the studio magic effects. I have that with me live.
So like, what's one of those effects that you enjoy using that you weren't able to use in the past?
Specifically, BT Stutter Edit from Isotope, which is a plugin. I'm like a plugin nerd now. That is a tempo sequence. In fact, here I've got I'm in my studio right now. I'll pull an instance of it up. I'm working on a track for a client right now. But this is why I built the rig. I was producing a bunch of stuff for my Crypto Wave radio stuff, and I got really into plugins, and I found this plugin, which is the BT Stutter Edit. This is all tempo sequence, step sequenced effects. What I mean by a tempo sequenced effect, you can set it to be 1 bar or 2 bars, or you can set it to just like a quarter note. So let's say I have a 16th note chopper. So my signal is going in and it's just a pad, and the pad is static. It just goes, ooh. So if I press the Stutter Edit program and I have it set to a 16th note chopper on one measure, that the next measure is going to go, it's going to change my static signal into that. Now, this program is very in depth, and so each step of the way I can program to do different things. So that's how you can get very glitchy things. I kind of call it like the tipper effect. A lot of them, like with these like comb filters, and especially when you start to stutter things into like beyond like 64th notes, it starts to get into like granular synthesis. So basically, like if you have things stuttering, like it starts to go so fast that the stutter turns into like pitches. And like the stutter edit program has this like really cool function, basically with like granular synthesis, and it's so that like when I'm playing, I hit a button. And I have it on like the vocals or the saxophone or the keyboard, and it goes wow, or some shit. That might be easier to understand than anything I just said. It's an effect that goes wow.
Yeah, you can like live capture something and like glitch it out, essentially. Is what you're saying.
Live capture glitching in a step sequence fashion. Yeah.
So in the past, you and I have talked about specifically something where there's like auditory induced states of consciousness that you've incorporated into some of your tracks.
I like to kind of like put downloads, at least in certain things. There are like streamlines of consciousness, and there are frequencies that correspond to different chakras or energy points in the body. So like lower frequencies might be like in the root, syllables too, like might be like root, and like you might be like the heart chakra, and then like might be the throat, and like E might be the crown or something like that. And in yogic culture and the yogic sciences, they've codified all these things, and it's actually really beautiful. Like a quick tangent on like Indian classical music, what came first, the chicken or the egg? What I'm talking about came first. They sat and mapped out the body. They mapped out what syllables and what frequencies correspond to the body and developed their musical system off of that. And now one could also argue that Western music also does the same. So Western music is very, very akin to, very close to the Fibonacci sequence. I don't know if you're familiar with like the Vitruvian Man or the Fibonacci sequence, but essentially there's a ratio, there's the golden ratio that all life exists inside of. In Western music, the system that we use is very, very much so based on the golden ratios. So in a way, Western music is already also sacred in a sense. Frequency can correspond to different energy points in your body, and sound can be very healing. I've been very into sound healing and sound meditations. I found this book by Andrew Weil on sound healing that I really love, and it's taught me some sound meditations. I suggest everyone goes and checks it out if they're into this stuff. If you're on Audible, check out Andrew Weil's book on, I think it's just called Sound Healing, or if you Google that, you'll be able to find it. There's some really great meditations where you do sounding. And then there's a lot of things where you can just like get things out. Like if you're having an angry day, then just like scream about it, let it out, like let these energies out of your body, vocalize them. It's very akin to ecstatic dance. So I like to kind of like do that in my music. A lot of the times he was also asking me about, let's see if here we go. Sorry. So a lot of the times, he was asking about like influences or what influences me, and sometimes I'm just like getting out my frustrations. So like in the songs there will be some crazy screaming that I like turn down, or some vocalization or some political idea that I resonate with. And this in particular, there's a Crypto Wave radio song called The Secret of the Golden Flower, which was really inspired by Osho's commentary on The Secret of the Golden Flower, which is also on Audible, which is like a wonderful series of talks on that, which is like a book on Zen, essentially. And so then that song, although it's like a fun song, there's a lot of like wisdom that I put into a robot voice. I like put my voice into a vocoder and detuned it all weird. But he's saying the robot is saying some interesting things, I think.
I just had one last question to bring it back to home a little bit. I was curious how it was like growing up in the Litz family with access to that Victor Litz music store, and how that shaped and influenced your ambitions and career.
Well, I can't express enough gratitude to my father and my grandfather and my family. My parents have been they've been supportive in a sense of like just letting me do my thing. And it was very much so, I feel like it was kind of like I loosely know about like Montessori schools. Not that I went to a Montessori school, but I feel like that was kind of like what was going on, where I had access to this music store and nobody was like telling me really what to do. They really weren't pushing anything on me. If anything, like I feel like kind of like going and getting a normal job was maybe a little more pushed than pursuing music, but nothing too much was really pushed, honestly. And so I was just kind of like in a playhouse of music, musical instruments, and was able to experience things and experiment on different instruments. I'm so grateful for Victor Litz Music Center and the lessons that I was able to take. I mean, I took lessons on French horn, and one day I decided I wanted to play bassoon, and I played bassoon for a year, and all sorts of wacky instruments that I was able to take lessons on at the store, and I had access to the instruments. Like not every kid can just wake up one day and be like, I want to play bassoon. And then my dad's like, well, I've got like a rental one that hasn't been rented out. And like this teacher who doesn't have a ton of students, because like who plays bassoon? So I'm very, very grateful for those things. And it's allowed me to incorporate music into my life kind of from day one in a very balanced way. And it showed me like loads and loads and loads of people that are involved with music that aren't like rock stars, that just like they're professional in the music industry, but they're not in the jam band industry, and they're not even in like big live concerts. They might be in sales, they might be in sound healing, they might be an acoustic guitar player that plays cover songs at venues around town, like at bars and stuff, and they support a family off of it, or they do banquets in DC. I know plenty of people. So it really exposed me to like the multiple outlets and like the diversity of what it means to have a career in music. I think that was really balancing. I've been able to really build like a nice, like I'm really, really happy and grateful for the life that I've been able to build. And that's really thanks to being exposed to just the multitudes of energies and walks of life, hanging out at Victor Litz Music Center in Gaithersburg, Maryland.
Austin, man, pleasure as always. Allie, thank you for coming on here. We're going to have Allie back. We're about to have Dan, guitarist of Litz, on for part 2. Allie's going to make an appearance there as well. Final question, wrapping this up, Austin. For any Litz fans out there listening, what's a direct message from you to them?
Ziggy zaggy, ziggy zaggy, oi, oi, oi.
Well, you heard it here.
Love you guys. Love, love, love.
Love you too. Thanks for having me, Cam.
Hell yeah. So check out Crypto Wave Radio, Litz Tour. Go grab a refill on that popcorn. We got Dan coming on here.
Wow. Or some shit.
We got Dan Gellerman, guitarist of Litz here, part 2. Gonna have Allie Galley joining us here in a little bit again as well. So Dan, let's start this off hot. When you're on stage improvising or you're writing songs, what certain ways are you hoping to impact the listeners of the music you're playing?
It depends on what I'm going for. Like music is such a broad thing. It could be as simple as like just playing something really simple and funky that just like makes you want to shake your ass. Like that's like one of the best things about music, is just like the thing where something is so undeniably funky where you can't help but like move, like like that's so awesome. And like that's just one thing too. Sometimes I want to do like a Pink Floyd-y kind of like paint a picture with the sound kind of thing, which is like almost like a different kind of thing. But there's like a million different things you can do with music, and they can like exist on this whole spectrum. So it depends on a bunch of stuff. Depends on what I'm feeling, depends on how the audience is feeling. You know, I'll look into the crowd and see how they're feeling. And if they're looking like they just want to get funky, and like, then it just might be time to get funky. But sometimes I'm not feeling that, so there might be something else. It's basically like a give and take between the audience and everybody on stage. It's like kind of one thing. It's one conversation going back and forth, at least to me.
What do you think it is about music that kind of doesn't have an agenda, that's open to that, reading the moment, that makes it the kind of music you want to play?
Well, like especially improvisational music allows the space for that to happen. Super prepared stuff, kind of more choreographed music, which I've played a ton of before, that comes out one way. And maybe people in the crowd, the vibe in the crowd is different than the vibe of what that song was written as or something. So it might feel a little more disconnected, but still cool. And I mean, that's how most music is. But improvisational music is like this extra step of like bridging that gap almost. I mean, like reading the crowd is like a huge skill with improvisational music for sure. I used to DJ a lot when I was younger. And that's like a huge skill with DJs, is you have to be able to like be like, okay, I'm gonna play this tune and then see how the audience reacts. And if like everybody leaves the dance floor, you know that you don't want to play more tunes like that. It's time to switch it up. And it's like the same kind of skill set with improvisational music, but it can happen like real fast, you know?
So we're talking about, like red hot funk music. What do you think it is about rhythm that psychologically can be so moving?
Oh man, I don't know. That's like $1 million question. It's got to be in our DNA or something. I mean, people have been beating on drums forever, and it's something that's just like in us. But definitely I lean towards like stuff that gets pretty hypnotic and can kind of create its own space once like your body and your brain gets used to like the rhythm, kind of free something up. I don't know.
Jump into the side here a little bit. Being a musician is a tough adventure, especially like a touring musician. Like growing up, you mentioned you were a DJ when you were younger. Have you gone back and forth in your mind about wanting to be a professional musician? Can you take me back to that time in your life where you really decided to commit?
I mean, I've always done it, and I've always done it what I thought was pretty hard, but I didn't go super, super hard until about like 4 years ago, maybe, in terms of like waking up in the morning and rehearsing for hours on end and like looking at the business side of things and trying to make as many connections as possible. You know, you got to work like any other job, really, if you want it to be your job. Because I started playing music when I was like 13, and I was playing in bands right after that, gigging pretty frequently right after that. But, in terms of making it something where it's going to be your life, where you can make money off of it, where you can get a bunch of people to listen to it and enjoy it. I mean, it takes elbow grease, like starting your own business. That's kind of like what it is in the end. Nobody's going to do it for you, especially these days. The days of like getting a magic record deal are like gone. If you do get that, there's got to be so many strings attached that it's like, it's got to raise some red flags. And I think in that spirit, like what I've done over the years and, what the rest of the dudes do in Litz is like, we've kind of built so many things ourselves where we've like learned along the way what it takes to have what we have. And, if we want to keep on scaling up, we're like going to learn that stuff ourselves and try to do our own thing, basically.
What can you share with other musicians about keeping yourself motivated and your cup full when you're like sleeping in a van for weeks on end and, tour's tough?
Yeah, I mean, that's like a really tough thing. I heard in an interview, I think it was Les Claypool. It might have been Larry Lalonde, but it's definitely one of the guys from Primus. The interviewer was asking, like, I think it was Les Claypool, and he was like, so you were probably the best bass player in San Francisco, right? And he was like, not a chance. There's definitely better bass players. There's like definitely better bass players. I just had the van chops. And what he meant by that is that he could be in a smelly van on the road you know, going to shows, or maybe some people aren't showing up, you know, night after night. It's not going to be a big success right off the way, but he's having fun doing it and staying stoked. And like, that's kind of the persistence you need, I suppose, to keep on doing it. And that's the hardest thing, you know, is like staying stoked. But, you know, like, all that's there if you're looking for it. You know, there's so many people out there that are stoked on music, and you have to keep that open. You can't like shut yourself off to the fact that like you can really make somebody's night out there, you know. And then just little things on the road, like seeing cool things that you would never see otherwise. You know, I've only been in Litz for like 2 years, but I mean, I've seen so many cool things on the road and seen so many cool places and had cool experiences. And like, if I wasn't in a band, I would be seeking other ways to try to travel too, you know? So you got to be able to look on like the bright side of things and stay open to new experiences, and be grateful for the experiences you have, and the experiences other people are having with your music. It's important to stay stoked in whatever you're doing, you know? And when I see other people that are stoked, that makes me stoked, you know?
Fuck yeah.
It's like a chain reaction.
You know, going deeper down this, being a good bandmate, you make band skills, especially like living with four guys who, you know, you all kind of, you run a business together. Like, any advice you can share on being a great bandmate?
Be flexible. Don't hold grudges. You know, everybody's flawed, and everybody has their own eccentricities. It can be tough creatively sometimes, because everybody's like, oh man, no, I have this idea and it's like really important, and somebody else has an idea, and it can be tough like that. Sometimes you feel like you have to fight for ideas, but like in the end, the music and the whole of what you're doing is so important that it's like you got to keep sight of that, you know? And like, that's the most important thing, is whatever comes out at the end, and the process of it all is the thing. And I mean, for me, it's like, it's all just such a fun experience and so rewarding that you just have to remember have like a good time with it.
The reason I love asking that question is I feel like the nuances of being a good bandmate are so essential with basically everything in life, as a metaphor almost, or as a like replicating those principles.
For sure. I mean, it's being in a band is like being in like, I mean, like, people, I'm not the first person to say it, but plenty of people say it, but it's like being like a four-way marriage almost. Like, you're super tight knit, you're doing all these things together. It's like a real study in like small group dynamics. Things have like consequences, but almost they don't at the same time. But it gets very intense, you know, especially if you're on the road for a while, or if you're recording an album or something, or, you know, writing an album. Those experiences are just, they're just intense. But you're doing them with other people, and like, you're learning and growing together and experiencing them with each other, like the ups and the downs and everything. It's hard to think of other things that like are similar to that almost.
So last question for you before Ali Galley makes a grand appearance here.
Okay.
This one's from Andrea Garcia. She'd love to know more about different artistic influences you have outside of music. You know, and we asked this to Austin too. He had a pretty cool answer to this, like literature, films, cartoons, philosophy, nature, like whatever else inspires your overall creativity.
Man, everything. It's like what I said about staying stoked. It's like I get stoked on so many different things, and it carries over to music in ways I don't immediately kind of expect a lot of the times. I'm huge into movies, and I mean, certain things will make me stoked. I mean, things that don't even have to do anything with music. Like, you watch like the Michael Jordan documentary, you know, the Last Dance, which is like amazing if you've ever seen that. Doesn't have anything to do with music really, but like, by the end of watching that, I was just so excited. I was like, damn, like, what a badass. Like, I want to go out there and do something badass, even though music is so different than that. And it's like, and not really like a competitive thing, or doesn't have anything to do with that for the most part, but like seeing like somebody with a cool drive to do something different is like badass. But like, music, films, literature, for sure.
What about like nature and philosophy?
I mean, for sure, like nature is huge. I think if I wasn't playing music, I would be like a snowboard rat somewhere, like a river rat doing something like that's like a huge recharging thing for me, for sure. Being in touch with nature, it's good because it kind of grounds you with just the natural patterns of things, I suppose. And like music is based off kind of natural patterns, you know, that we can perceive with our ears. It's all tied to the natural world. And I feel like if you do experience nature a lot, I feel like that has to rub off in some kind of way. I mean, I think it does for me, for sure. That definitely does it. Films, like there's cool cinematography in a movie. I'll just see a scene that creates a mood and be like, man, I want, like, that's like, I want to play something that has that effect where it cuts and it does this thing and it makes me feel that way. You know, like being able to make something that just goes and it gives you that feeling, like that's so cool. It's the coolest thing ever. Or like a book, like my favorite book is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. And it starts off with like 15, 20 pages of Steinbeck just describing the Salinas Valley in California. Just like really intricate, describing the landscape. And it's like so pastoral and amazing. And it's like, wow, I want to like take the audience on this like long, detailed journey of describing something where they're, you know, you're slowly building up this world. Like I want to be able to do that with music. So like there's like these analogies I can see in other things that like I definitely like try to apply in an extremely abstract way in music, you know.
Absolutely. So we got Ali Galley here taking us home.
So we've talked about how you did some DJing in the past, and I was curious how that compares to playing live and some of the artists that you would spin, and how that's influenced you.
I mean, it's a really good question, and it's something that I think about consciously, and it has to happen subconsciously with me musically as well, just because I've spent so much time listening to electronic music, even from when I was young. Even before I DJ'd, like I had older brothers and a dad who's in electronic music, so I grew up with electronic music in the house. So I think that's part of my musical DNA for sure. And then DJing, having that skill set on top of it, like there's mixing. If you're mixing like house music or the stuff I was mixing, like it's the actual mixing part's like not the hardest part. The hardest part's like selection and like reading a crowd and being able to piece two things together in the right way and keep a crowd interested. Like that's kind of the toughest part, at least that I found. So like that was a skill set that like I tried to take over into improvisational instrumental playing, really. But in terms of taste in music and sounds and stuff, that definitely carried over as well. Like I still love synthesizers and electronic sounds, and I think repetitive rhythms and all that blends over into my playing. And even though right now I don't have any synthesizers in my live setup, like I've been messing around with them and for years and years, and hopefully at some point in the future I can start working on bringing that out live with Litz. But yeah, that's a huge part of my influences for sure. I listen to lots and lots of different kinds of music, so lots of things like seep out into my playing. But I think like hypnotic rhythms and interesting soundscapes and textures are like something I definitely focus on, and I also get sucked into. You know, it's something that if I don't pay attention to for too long, I'd be like, oh man, I'm having a lot of fun with guitar pedals right now. I hope this is working out.
Has that affected the tone that you've tried to create with your guitar and the pedal structures that you go through for your live setup?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely parts of my rig, the sounds that I go for that are like kind of geared towards that. You know, the whole way I think about a synthesizer is that, like, you can kind of make any sound possible, and like why limit any instrument to make it just sound like a guitar or just sound like a bass or whatever. Just make it sound like whatever, as long as it's a good sound, really. So I might have too many pedals, but hopefully they sound good. And, you know, especially because Austin has so many sounds at his disposal, you know, it's kind of like easy for me to drift off into weird sound land as well if the music is kind of going into that territory. because I can go for a nice, clean, normal guitar sound or kind of a normal rock sound, but I got plenty of effects to make it sound really fucking crazy if I want to as well. And that's real fun, but also it's something that I personally have to watch because I get too sucked into it, of too many things going on. And, you know, I don't know how fun it is for the audience sometimes when I'm just messing around. Maybe it is, I don't know, but it's definitely a lot of fun for me.
I mean, if you're having fun, I'm sure they're having fun. How has it felt like starting as like friends with the guys and then like jumping in the band to help them out, and now being what I assume is, or what I believe is like an integral part of the band and like the sound and the direction that you guys are building together?
Well, I mean, the circumstances were crazy because I jumped on a 30-day tour like the day of that tour. And I'd been friends with them and had heard their tunes, you know, here and there. So I was familiar with how a handful of them sounded. So I'm learning tunes in the van on the way to the first gig that night. And we played like some of the easier ones and and then did a lot of improvisation. But it was a lot of work that first tour. I mean, it was nonstop learning tunes, and I feel like probably a lot better sounding now than I was then with the band. But it was like hectic, but like real fun. And we knew each other on a personal level. So like that was like pretty smooth on that front. But like the technical challenge of learning was like definitely real tough. I mean, it was like forgetting things left and right. It took me a minute to like learn everything. But having them as friends and, you know, understanding their personalities, like that probably helped like a whole bunch. It would have been really weird to be dropped in like a band the day of a 30-day tour where I didn't know anybody, didn't know how their personalities worked and stuff. Whereas this is like we're at least friends. We know how to like work with each other on some level at least. And then the hard part is, hey, we're playing 2 sets a night every night. And I don't know the songs.
Yeah, but I'm sure that was a learning experience, and then now you guys have the whole bigger picture project behind you, and like have, you know, solidified like songs that you're tracked on, and even continue to grow and make new songs, which has really solidified your sound. And I think that you've had a lot of influence on that, especially that stuff you're talking about with like, you know, your guitar style playing and how it's been influenced. I think that's something the band really needed, because they've pushed like a lot of shred guitars in the past, and you've got both worlds. Like I feel like you add a slower element that's needed. You know what I mean?
I mean, I couldn't even pretend to do that shred stuff. I mean, those guys are so good at doing that. I would have paled in comparison if I tried to do that approach. I mean, the best I could do is just try to sound as much like myself as possible. Even though like other people's roles in the band didn't change a ton, they still had to change like a little bit just to adjust to my feel in like solo sections or jamming and stuff like that. A group of musicians, you develop like a language with each other, and that language, even though it's like one person, might just be the difference. Like the entire language changed by that. So I mean, it took us a minute to kind of develop a language that feels like kind of complete and our own thing. But I mean, after a while, especially like, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, like it started feeling like, okay, this is feeling real good, loose and smooth now. And we're able to like take it in fun and cool territories. And, you know, it's the thing, like you're getting to know somebody on like a super personal level, like through music. So I can hear Austin solo and be like, oh, I think he might be about to do this. Let me play something here. Like, oh, cool, that worked. Or sometimes he'll surprise me, be like, oh, that's awesome. Okay. And that's like the fun part about improvisational music. But that's the tough part about improvisational music too, is just like it takes a while to develop that vocabulary with each other and those musical relationships, really.
I did also want to say, or want to ask how it felt like, because you guys did that New Year's show. Have you done something like that before? Because you guys totally killed the timing on the ball drop, and it just looked like you were having such a good time, like getting to play that alluded saying like at midnight, like, you know, because it's really fun to be on this side of that event, but like being on stage and like, you know, getting to be the one ringing in the new year for everyone. How did that feel?
It was fun, man. It was like I mean, I'd never done anything like that before. In terms of getting it down to the timing, I found a website with a like seconds marker on it, and I learned how to not turn my phone off, like with the screen like automatically turning off. So that was our cheat sheet. I kind of just gave my phone to Austin. I was like, here we go. And we just kind of watched it and tried to time it right, and it worked out good. So that was fun. It was really cool and felt special. And it was very nice being in our hometown with like kind of like this smaller, newer venue. And it was real fun. Yeah, it was a good time.
You guys definitely crushed it. The energy, brought it to the top, and just let it go. And you say you're not a shredder, but like, dude, you're literally tearing it up.
Well, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
So for anyone out there listening, you may or may not know Ali Galley. You probably do if you're a Litz fan, but Ali Galley's got some of the most epic energy at a show. Like seeing Ali Galley dance, it's what it's all about. And I want to just chime in, Ali Galley, and ask you like what's your MO with how you let yourself be yourself at shows? Like, fill us in on your enlightenment.
I mean, it's really truly just like kind of like what me and Austin were talking about earlier, and just like letting the music take control. It's really all it is. Like, it's not like getting fucked up. It's being in the right state of mind at the right time, and like really just having it like go through you. Like, just shut my eyes and just like let each part of my body, like, you know, kind of find something in the music that it wants to say. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, you know, you rip your shirt off, or sometimes you just bobbing your head in the back of the room. Like, you know, I find myself on both ends of the spectrum, because some nights I'm just like trying to catch a show, and like I had to work in the morning, so I'm not trying to go crazy. But, you know, when I give myself the time to let loose, you know, we got freak flags and they fly.
Amen. Dan, I guess it's time for our closing question here. We asked this to Austin as well, but like, if you could leave Litz fans listening out there with a final message from you, you know, here's your chance.
Stay stoked. Even though times are hard right now. Like, I mean, you're a music fan. Everybody, if you're listening to this, you're probably music fans. So like, you know, support the arts in the safest and best way that you can. And I guess we'll see you out there.
Well, check out Litz tour. You know, this is a Weird Music podcast. It's at Funky Litz Music, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, we'll see all you crazies out there. And if you see Ali Galley at a show, buy him a beer, all right? Or a mixed drink, a White Claw. What's your order, Ali Galley?
Well, it depends. It's usually the cheapest beer on the menu that doesn't have light in the name, and a shot of bourbon. So like PBR, High Life, something like that. Or a White Claw if I'm feeling fancy.
Well, there you have it. All right, y'all. Take care out there.
All right. See ya.
You made it this far. Thank you for listening. And a big thank you to our sponsors, Hemp Relief CBD, SEM Tickets, Devil Wind Brewing, and Artillery Productions. We got links in the description below. Go check out all the awesome stuff they've got going on. And yeah, much love, everyone.